Hey everybody, welcome back to Shock and Schlock. I'm your host, Church Gills, and today I'm back continuing the Brian Paulin review series. I'm going to be doing this tomorrow and throughout the week leading up to Thursday's interview with Brian Paulin as well. I've just been busy the last few days, so apologies for the late upload here, but today's review is Brian Paulin's newest film, Septic, from 2022, last year. Yeah, this is going to be a rough one. Just want to preface this by saying this is definitely the most graphic Morbid Vision Films production by far. I'm going to be talking about some uncomfortable topics here potentially, and I just also want to say there might be not necessarily spoilers, but if you want like complete going into this blind, definitely don't watch the review because I'm going to mention a couple of parts that really stood out to me. So here we go. So Septic follows this couple who are trying to have a baby, and conventional methods have not been working, and they hear from somebody that says they have a rather unorthodox way, we're going to get into this later as well, unorthodox way of the couple conceiving a baby. And they have to do something for the people that are giving this service as well. And this sort of leads to dark web stuff like Red Room, snuff films, and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't want to spoil too much of the plot here because I feel like this is a film that, going into it as blind as possible, or at least like story-wise, this will serve better. The impact will definitely hit harder if you have a very limited understanding or basis for the film, like going in, like a basic understanding of it. So first off, as this is a Brian Paulin movie, a lot of people are wondering, if you haven't seen this, what's the gore like? Well, the gore is top tier, of course. The special effects are insane. Very gnarly, very graphic, very gross, and this film feels very grimy, and at this point I've seen almost everything from Brian Paulin, and this is what I would say is probably his most like mean-spirited, nasty film, and the special effects definitely lead to this, like in stuff like my previous review of Cryptoplasm. The special effects and gore in that sort of serve for this like scary, cosmic horror, gross purpose. In this, the special effects like add to how disturbing this is, and I think this is a very disturbing film. For fans of extreme cinema that are sort of jaded like myself, this one still shocked me quite a bit, a couple of times actually, so keep that in mind. So the gore, great. The acting, pretty solid. That's something that you'll notice across all Brian Paulin films, or the acting is like, it's nothing to write home about, but it serves its purpose, and there's nobody that like stands out as being terrible. This one is actually, I would say, even a step up from previous Brian Paulin films. He has a lot of the same cast between his films, and I feel like over time they've all sort of developed into better actors as well. And this film was no different. The intense scenes, some of them with less dialogue, rely on very physical performances, which I thought were done very well in this. And yeah, this is a hard film to talk about without just immediately going into how disturbing this is. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but Brian Paulin has never been afraid to like stray away or shy away from gore or intense things, or more taboo subjects. We have stuff like Fetus. I'm going to be talking about that in a future review, so I won't mention too much, but if you've seen Fetus, you know what I'm talking about. And it's Brian Paulin will show you some stuff that I guarantee you haven't seen before in a film, and some stuff you probably didn't want to see. The way like the conception occurs, I'm not going to spoil what happens or anything. Quite frankly, I'm not entirely sure what happened. It's very nasty. I mean, I have an understanding of what it was supposed to be. This is not a bad thing, by the way. It's very nasty, and it'll mess with you a little bit, and it's really gross, and it's sort of like, it shows you what the rest of the film's going to be like. Like, this sets the tone immediately, and the sort of like basis or like catch to this entire deal for the, the couple trying to have the child, like what they have to do, also very, very bleak. This is a film with not like an ounce of happiness in it. It is not light. This is a soul-sucking, awful, disturbing film. But awful not in quality. Awful as in, like, the subject matter is very bleak and intense. If you're sensitive to seeing, obviously this is fictional, so this is fictional what I'm saying. I'm just saying that for YouTube and everybody that wants to get on me about this, but if you're sensitive to seeing children getting killed pretty graphically and dismembered pretty graphically, definitely stay away from this film, because there is a scene in this that will stick with me for a very long time, involving a young child getting killed and then something happening to their body. It's very uncomfortable. And uncomfortable is a word that I would describe this entire film. I feel like that sums it up. I also feel like, quality-wise, though, this is the best-paced Brian Paulin film, away from Cryptic Plasm. I mean, he really does pacing pretty well. I think really the only one that I really have pacing issues with would be Blood Pigs. I'm going to be doing a review of that later on. But for the most part, he's good at pacing. But this one definitely, it continues along at a steady pace. It's never boring. There's always like this very uncomfortable atmosphere. It's always very bleak and dark. And throughout the film, it's like a car accident where there's not going to be a happy ending to this. You know that it's just going to continue to get worse for the people involved in this, but you can't look away. And it's very rare in recent times that I am this invested in like an extreme horror film. I've seen definitely my fair share, as anybody that knows me knows. I've seen a lot, and I've become pretty jaded to this sort of stuff, but this film did manage to shock me, surprisingly. This is, I'm not saying this is like a ding or anything on Brian Paulin, but this is the first Brian Paulin film that ever sort of, gut punch moment there. He does gross outs, he can do scares, he can do drama and intensity and everything, but this is the one that like really, like, this one makes you want to take a shower afterwards. For example, this is a bit of a spoiler, and I'm not going to say which character it happens to or, anything there, but there's a genital mutilation in this, like a degloving scene. Wow. That was unexpected. Brian Paulin is very, his films definitely are showcases for gore, but, that is a very, like, different type of violence, and it's very mean-spirited and bleak and gross. And if you have I'm trying to think of a word that YouTube won't do. I'm just going to say the medical term, a penis. If you have one, this will hurt you, and it'll stick with you. And yeah, this movie's great. If you're a fan of extreme cinema and you feel like you've seen it all and nothing really shocks you anymore, this is a good place to start. Or a good, film to sort of put on if you really want to get that shock value again, like that, the Sick on Cinema boys say, Chasing the Dragon. This is another one, for me personally. It's not my favorite Brian Paulin film overall. That's not because there's anything wrong with this film. I actually think this film's really, really good. Don't have any complaints about it or anything. I just, I prefer, Cryptic Plasm because I'm a nerd. This one as well, something I want to mention too. The soundtracks in Brian Paulin films are always really good, and they serve the purpose of this. this film, even if it didn't have the soundtrack I'm about to talk about, is an assault on the senses, and the soundtrack is no different. It is very noisy and aggressive, and it sounds mechanical and awful, and it really fits. And yeah, this is great. Go buy this. I'm going to leave a link in the description to go buy this film from Brian's eBay page. Check this one out. If you are just getting into extreme cinema, maybe this isn't the best place to start. Start with another Brian Paulin film, see if you're into that. But if you're a fan of Brian Paulin already, if you're a fan of very extreme cinema, and if you're looking for the next big thing, you can't do any better than Septic. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Come back tomorrow. Going to be doing another review. This time, one that I don't really see being talked about enough. Morbid Tales. We're reviewing Morbid Tales tomorrow. And yeah. Tuesday will be a review of Fetus. Wednesday, Blood Pigs. Thursday, interview with Brian Paulin. As I won't be able to cover all of the rest of his films individually, I may throw in a couple double feature reviews here and there. So keep an eye out for that. And as always, I've been your host, Herschel Gillis, signing off. Zero thoughts, zero editing, zero brain cells, and zero planning. Make sure to subscribe. Can't talk today. If you haven't, keep your notifications on. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks.